There was a smear of plum lipstick on my champagne flute, and the room smelled overwhelmingly of hot hairspray and wilting eucalyptus. That's what I remember most. Not the rage, not at first, just the heavy, suffocating silence when my sister walked into my bridal suite wearing a floor-length ivory silk wedding gown. The morning of my wedding didn't feel like magic. It felt like an impending audit. I woke up at 5:30 a.m. to the sound of a garbage truck grinding its gears outside the hotel window. The sheets were damp with my own nervous sweat. Next to me on the nightstand, my phone screen glowed with a text from Ben sent at midnight. Got the rings. Got the vows. Try to sleep, bird. See you at the altar. Ben. He was the anchor in the chaotic, swirling mess of my family's dynamics. He smelled reliably like cedarwood soap and old library paper, a sharp contrast to the sickly, sweet, overwhelming perfume of my childhood. He was a high school history teacher who liked silence and black coffee. I was a graphic designer who spent too much time apologizing for things I didn't do. We made sense. But as the sun dragged itself over the horizon, bleeding a bruised purple light into the room, my stomach tightened. The bridal suite was quickly invaded by my 3 bridesmaids, hauling garment bags and half-empty boxes of pastries. The air conditioner hummed a broken, rattling tune that couldn't quite mask the screech of the makeup artist's rolling suitcase. "Where is she?" my best friend Hannah asked. She didn't use a name. She didn't have to. Hannah was currently aggressively chewing a stale almond croissant, crumbs dropping onto her matching navy blue robe. "Running late?" I said, staring at my own pale, tired face in the vanity mirror. My skin felt tight. She texted Mom. Said she had a wardrobe emergency and had to swing by a boutique. Hannah paused mid-chew. "A wardrobe emergency. On your wedding day. She had 6 months to buy a dress, Chloe." I shrugged, the heavy satin of my own robe slipping off my shoulder. "It's Taylor. If she isn't making an entrance, she isn't breathing." Taylor is my older sister by exactly 2 years and 4 days. Growing up, our house was a stage, and I was merely the understudy holding her props. Taylor was loud. She was magnetic. She had the kind of thick auburn hair that actually did what it was supposed to do, and a laugh that made people want to give her things. My mother, Diane, treated Taylor's moods like weather events unavoidable, requiring preparation, and completely immune to criticism. "She's just spirited, Chloe," my mother would say whenever Taylor hijacked my birthdays, my graduations, my quiet little achievements. "Don't be so sensitive." By 10 a.m., the room smelled of burnt sugar from a curling iron left on too long, mixed with the sharp acetone of touch-up nail polish. My mother buzzed around, adjusting things that didn't need adjusting. She kept checking her watch, her jaw set in a tight, anxious line. "Mom, sit down," I said. My voice sounded thin over the whir of a blow-dryer. "She'll get here." "I just worry," Mom muttered, smoothing an invisible wrinkle on her mother-of-the-bride dress, a muted taupe that she had complained about for 3 weeks because it washed out her complexion. "You know how traffic gets on the interstate." And she was so stressed about finding the right shoes. I closed my eyes as the makeup artist dabbed cold, wet concealer under my eyes. I didn't say anything. I didn't point out that I was the one getting married in 4 hours. I didn't point out that my chest felt like it was wrapped in barbed wire. I just breathed in the smell of aerosol hairspray and waited. At noon, I stepped into my dress. It wasn't a princess gown. It was a structured, heavy crepe silk sheath. Minimalist, quiet. It weighed heavily on my shoulders, the corset boning digging slightly into my ribs. It felt real. For a brief, shining 20 minutes, as Hannah hooked the tiny pearl buttons up my back, I felt a spark of actual joy. I looked at myself in the full-length mirror. I looked like a bride. I looked like someone who was about to build her own life, miles away from the suffocating gravity of my family. Then, the heavy oak door of the bridal suite clicked open. The door didn't bang. It swung open slowly, the heavy brass hinges groaning, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Taylor stood in the doorway. My brain is a logical machine. When it encounters something that doesn't make sense, it short circuits, frantically trying to categorize the visual data. Texture: smooth, liquid silk. Cut: a cowl neckline, plunging low in the back, fitted perfectly through the hips with a sweeping, pooling hem. Color: white, not cream, not blush, not oyster, or champagne, or any of the cowardly euphemisms people use to excuse bad wedding etiquette. It was stark, brilliant, unadulterated white. In fact, under the fluorescent lights of the hotel hallway behind her, it looked whiter than my own dress. She was holding a small silver clutch, her auburn hair cascaded in perfect, deliberate waves over one shoulder. She looked stunning. She looked like she was about to walk down an aisle. The silence in the room was absolute. I heard the makeup artist slowly cap a bottle of foundation. The click echoed like a gunshot. "Oh, thank God I made it," Taylor breathed, stepping into the room. She smelled of gardenias and expensive gin. You would not believe the morning I've had. My tailor completely botched the hem on the navy dress. I literally had to buy this off the rack an hour ago. Hannah took a step forward, her hands balling into fists. "Taylor, you are wearing a wedding dress." Taylor's laugh was bright, practiced, and entirely devoid of warmth. "What? Oh, please, it's a slip dress. It's eggshell, honestly. Chloe's is totally different. Chloe, you look so cute, by the way. Very. Modest." I stared at her. I didn't scream. I didn't throw my champagne flute. The rage didn't boil over. It froze solid in my chest. I felt a cold bead of sweat slide down my spine, tracing the line of my spine beneath the heavy crepe fabric of my gown. My hands went numb. I looked at my mother. Mom was staring at Taylor, her eyes wide, but her face quickly morphed into her default setting: appeasement. "Well," Mom stammered, wringing her hands, "it is very pretty, Taylor, and it's a completely different fabric than Chloe's. Nobody will even notice." "She is wearing white, Diane," Hannah snapped, abandoning all pretense of respect. "She looks like the bride." "Hannah, please," my mother hissed, her voice dropping into a frantic whisper. "Don't cause a scene. We don't have time for this. The photographer is waiting downstairs." "Taylor had an emergency. Let's just be flexible." I looked from my mother to my sister. Taylor was watching me. Beneath the casual, breathless apology, her eyes were flat and sharp. She was waiting for me to break. She wanted me to scream. She wanted the tears, the smeared mascara, the ugly, snot-nosed breakdown that would instantly label me the bridezilla, the hysterical younger sister ruining her own day over a simple misunderstanding. I swallowed the bile rising in my throat. The corset dug deeper into my ribs. "It's fine," I heard myself say. My voice was a dead, hollow monotone. Hannah whipped her head around to look at me. Betrayed. Chloe. I said, "It's fine, Hannah." I turned away from the mirror. I didn't look at Taylor again. "Let's go take the pictures." The next 3 hours were a blurred, nauseating fever dream. The photographer kept trying to pose us. Every time he yelled, "Bride in the center!" Taylor would naturally drift into the middle of the frame, the white silk of her dress catching the afternoon sunlight. During the family portraits, the venue coordinator, a sharp-eyed woman named Monica, actually walked up to Taylor and asked, "Are we doing a joint ceremony today? I only have one room on my clipboard." Taylor just laughed. Mom shushed the coordinator. I dug my fingernails so hard into my bouquet that the stems snapped. Then came the ceremony. Standing at the back of the church, waiting for the heavy wooden doors to open, I felt untethered from my own body. The organ music swelled. The doors pulled back. I looked down the aisle. Ben was standing there. He looked nervous, shifting his weight from foot to foot, but when he saw me, his shoulders dropped. He smiled, a real grounding smile. I locked eyes with him, trying to use him as a lifeline, trying to pull myself down the runner toward him. But out of the corner of my right eye, in the front row, I saw it, the glare of the white silk. Taylor had positioned herself right on the aisle. As I walked past, her leg was crossed, her white heel practically brushing the hem of my dress. When Ben took my hands at the altar, his palms were warm, Mine were like ice. He leaned in close as the priest began his droning introduction. "You look beautiful," he whispered. Then his brow furrowed slightly as he glanced over my shoulder toward the front pews. "Why the hell is your sister wearing a wedding dress?" "Don't," I whispered back, my jaw clenched so tight my teeth ached. "Just don't look at her." We said the vows. We exchanged the rings. We kissed. The congregation clapped. But the entire time, the air felt polluted. The narrative of the day had already shifted. As we walked back down the aisle, the whispers from Ben's extended family were audible over the recessional music. "Did you see the sister?" I thought it was a double wedding at first. So disrespectful. Taylor had done it. She hadn't just stolen the spotlight, she had stained the entire memory of the day. And the worst part was my own cowardice. I had let her, just like I always did. I had swallowed my pride to keep the peace, and the peace tasted like ash. The reception was held in a renovated warehouse space downtown. Exposed brick, Edison bulbs, the heavy thumping bass of a top 40 playlist echoing off the high ceilings. By 7 p.m., I had a blinding headache. The noise was a physical weight pressing against my temples. The catering staff was serving dry chicken and over-roasted asparagus. I sat at the sweetheart table next to Ben, mechanically chewing food I couldn't taste. Ben kept rubbing my back, his thumb pressing into the stiff fabric of my dress. "You're a million miles away, bird," he said softly over the noise of clinking silverware. "Just a headache," I lied. "She looks ridiculous, if that helps," he offered, gesturing with his chin toward the dance floor. Taylor was out there, the white silk clinging to her as she danced with one of Ben's groomsmen. "Everyone thinks she's unhinged. It doesn't help," I admitted softly. "But thank you. I needed air. I needed silence." I stood up, excused myself, and navigated through the maze of tables toward the back of the venue, where the bridal party had a small, private holding room. The room was dim, lit only by a single lamp in the corner. The air smelled of stale perfume and abandoned hors d'oeuvres. Bags and shoes were strewn across the leather sofas. I sank into a velvet armchair, kicking off my heels. The relief in my arches was momentary. On the glass coffee table in front of me, a phone buzzed. It vibrated violently against the glass, the harsh buzzing sound startling me. I looked down. It was Taylor's phone in its distinct, obnoxious, glitter-encased shell. She must have dumped her clutch in here before hitting the dance floor. It buzzed again. The screen lit up. I didn't mean to look. I really didn't. I am not someone who snoops. But the text notification was massive, glaring brightly in the dim room. "Jessica, LMAO, did the groom at least look at you?" My breath hitched. Jessica was Taylor's best friend, a woman whose entire personality consisted of drinking Aperol spritzes and validating Taylor's worst impulses. I stared at the screen. The phone went dark. I sat there in the silence, listening to the muffled thumping of the bass from the main hall. A sick, sour feeling began to curdle in my stomach. I reached out and picked up the phone. The glass felt cold against my clammy skin. I pressed the side button. The screen woke up. It required a passcode. I knew it. It was our mother's birthday. Taylor had never bothered to change it since 2018 because she couldn't be bothered to memorize a new number. I tapped the numbers, 0814. The phone unlocked, opening directly to her iMessage thread with Jessica. My thumbs hovered over the screen, a rational voice in my head, the voice that had kept me quiet and compliant for 28 years, screamed at me to put it down. "Don't look. You don't want to know. Just go back out there. Keep the peace." I scrolled up. The words on the screen blurred, then sharpened, cutting through the lingering fog in my brain like a scalpel. "Jessica, 2:15 p.m. Send a pic of the dress. Tell me you actually wore it. Taylor, 2:18. Image attached." The image was a mirror selfie of Taylor in the white silk dress taken in the boutique dressing room 2 weeks ago. Not this morning, 2 weeks ago. Taylor, 2:19 p.m. Told mom it was an emergency. She bought it hook, line, and sinker. Chloe looks like she's going to throw up. Jessica 220p meter. Iconic. She deserves it for having a cash bar anyway. I kept scrolling back. Days ago. A week ago. Taylor, last Thursday. It's just pathetic. She's settling. Ben is so boring, but whatever. He's safe for her. Jessica, are you still going to try? Taylor, why not? If he bites, it proves my point. If he doesn't, I still look hotter at the wedding. My heart wasn't beating, it was vibrating. I felt entirely detached from reality. The room was spinning slightly. I clicked back to the main message screen, my fingers trembling so badly I almost dropped the device. I typed Ben's name into her search bar. A thread popped up. Muted. I opened it. There were no replies from Taylor, only outgoing messages sent late at night. And then, Ben's final, definitive responses. Taylor, May 24, 1:15, me. Hey, heard you're having drinks at the hotel bar. Need some company? Chloe's asleep, right? Taylor, May 24, 1:45. Come on, Ben. We both know you're settling. It's fine. But we could have one fun night before you lock yourself in the suburbs forever. Ben, May 24, 6. Me, Taylor. Do not ever text me like this again. I love your sister. You are entirely out of line. If you do this again, I will show this to Chloe. Stay away from me. I stared at Ben's text. A hot, prickling wave of tears finally hit the back of my eyes, but they weren't tears of betrayal from him. They were tears of profound relief. He shut her down. He protected me. He loved me. But Taylor hadn't just worn a white dress to steal the spotlight. She had tried to sleep with my fiancé a week before my wedding, and when she failed, when her ego took a hit from the boring history teacher, she decided to humiliate me instead. She bought the dress not out of vanity, but out of malice. She weaponized our mother's enabling nature. She laughed about it with her friend while I sat in a corset, bleeding out my anxiety, trying to make the day perfect. I put the phone down on the table. The silence in the room felt different now. It didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt hollowed out, clean. I looked at myself in the small vanity mirror in the corner. My makeup was still flawless. My hair was still pinned, but the passive, terrified younger sister who had walked into this room 5 minutes ago was dead. The girl who let her sister take the bigger bedroom, the better car, the center of the photograph, she was gone. In her place was something much colder, something precise. I picked up Taylor's phone. I navigated to her photo gallery. I took screenshots of the conversation with Jessica, the boutique photo from 2 weeks ago, the mocking texts about my pity wedding. I screenshotted the text to Ben. I opened her email app and emailed the 5 screenshots directly to myself. Then, I deleted the sent emails from her outbox, closed the apps, and placed the phone exactly where I had found it. I slipped my heels back on. They pinched my toes, but the pain felt grounding. It felt real. I walked out of the bridal suite, the heavy crepe of my dress sweeping the floor behind me. I didn't go back to the sweetheart table. I bypassed the dance floor entirely, ignoring Hannah waving at me from the bar. I walked straight to the back corner of the room, near the catering kitchen doors, where a small folding table was set up behind a black curtain. This was the AV station. A young guy with a patchy beard and a black polo shirt was sitting there, scrolling through his phone, a half-eaten plate of pasta next to his laptop. He looked up, startled, as a bride suddenly materialized in his cramped space. "Oh, hey," he stammered, sitting up straight. "Is the mic volume okay? I can turn down the bass if it's—" "The volume is fine," I said. My voice was eerily calm. The pitch was flat. "I need a favor." Sure. Whatever you need, missus." I have my phone," I said, pulling my device out of my hidden dress pocket. "I have 5 images saved to my camera roll. I need you to connect my phone to the main projector, the big one behind the dance floor." The guy blinked. He looked from my face to the massive, rolled-up projection screen hanging above the DJ booth, the one we were supposed to use later for a slideshow of our childhood photos. "Like, right now?" he asked, scratching his neck. "The DJ is in the middle of a set. The schedule says the slideshow isn't until 8:30. Schedules change, I said. I pulled a crisp $100 bill out of the small emergency envelope taped inside my phone case. I placed it flat on his laptop keyboard. I need you to drop the screen. I need you to plug this cord into my phone. And I need you to kill the music when I give you the signal. The AV guy looked at the money, then up at my eyes. I don't know what he saw in my expression, but he swallowed hard, nodded, and reached for a USB-C adapter. "You're the boss," he muttered. I unlocked my phone, opened the gallery, and selected the first screenshot. The image of Taylor in the white dress from 2 weeks ago, with the timestamp glaring at the top. "Give me 3 minutes," I told him, turning back toward the curtain. "When you see me take the microphone from the DJ, hit the lights, and project." The walk from the AV table to the DJ booth took exactly 42 seconds. I counted my steps. The floor beneath my heavy crepe skirt was already tacky with spilled beer and condensation. The bass from a remixed Rihanna track reverberated through the floorboards, vibrating up through my pinched toes and into my shins. I didn't look at Ben. I didn't look at my mother. I kept my eyes locked on the DJ, a guy in his late 20s wearing oversized headphones and a bored expression. I stepped up onto the small riser. The air up here smelled intensely of ozone and hot electronics. "Excuse me," I said. He couldn't hear me. He was adjusting a dial, bobbing his head. I reached out and pressed my hand flat over his mixer board. He jumped, pulling one side of his headphones off. "Whoa, hey, I need the microphone," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it was dangerously level. He looked at my face, then down at my dress. People don't argue with brides. It's an unspoken rule of the hospitality industry. He silently unclipped the wireless mic from its stand and handed it to me. "Cut the music," I told him. He hesitated for a fraction of a second, then slid the master fader down. The music didn't just stop, it died. The sudden absence of the heavy bass left a ringing vacuum in the warehouse. The scattered conversations on the dance floor and at the tables crashed into the silence, suddenly loud and exposed, before trailing off into a confused murmur. 200 faces turned toward the DJ booth. My hands were shaking. Not a little tremble, but a violent, uncontrollable tremor. I gripped the cold metal of the microphone with both hands, pressing my elbows into my ribs to stabilize myself. I didn't feel like a badass. I didn't feel empowered. I felt entirely nauseous. My throat was sand. I was about to detonate a bomb in the middle of my own life. I looked toward the center of the dance floor. Taylor had stopped mid-twirl. She was standing there in that glaring white silk, a plastic cup of gin in her hand, looking up at me with an annoyed, patronizing little smile. She thinks I'm going to give a toast, I realized. She thinks I'm going to thank her for coming. I raised the microphone. The feedback shrieked for a second, making half the room wince. "Hi," I said. My voice echoed off the exposed brick walls, sounding thin and unfamiliar. "Sorry to interrupt the dancing. We're going to do things a little out of order tonight." I looked over at the AV corner. The guy in the black polo gave me a terrified, jerky nod. Above my head, the motorized hum of the massive projection screen ground to life. It descended slowly from the ceiling, casting a massive, pale shadow over the dance floor. People shuffled back to give it room. The projector mounted on the opposite beam clicked on, flooding the screen with a blinding rectangular blue light. Then, the screen mirrored my phone. A collective gasp, soft but distinct, rippled through the front row of tables. It was the first screenshot, blown up to 10 feet tall. Taylor's mirror selfie in the boutique dressing room, wearing the exact white silk dress she was currently standing in. The timestamp at the top of the message thread was highlighted, glowing brightly against the dark mode background. May 18, 2:18 p.m. 2 weeks ago. Beneath the photo, the text was crisp and legible to anyone with decent eyesight. Taylor told Mom it was an emergency. She bought it hook, line, and sinker. Chloe looks like she's going to throw up. I lowered the microphone. I just let them read it. The silence in the room changed texture. It went from confused to horrifyingly awkward. The clink of a fork dropping onto a ceramic plate sounded like a gunshot. I watched Taylor. Her patronizing smile didn't fade. It froze. It calcified on her face. The hand holding her plastic cup tightened until her knuckles went white. She looked up at the screen, then at me. For the first time in 28 years, I saw actual, unadulterated panic in my sister's eyes. "That's," Taylor started, her voice shrill and carrying across the quiet room. "That's fake. Where did you get that?" "Scroll, please," I said into the microphone, my eyes glued to her. The AV guy hit the arrow key. The next image popped up, the thread with Jessica. Taylor: "It's just pathetic. She's settling. Ben is so boring, but whatever. He's safe for her." Taylor: "If he bites, it proves my point. If he doesn't, I still look hotter at the wedding." A low murmur started to build in the back of the room. Ben's family sighed. They were whispering, pointing at the screen, then pointing at Taylor. I saw Jessica standing near the bar. She looked like she wanted the floor to open up and swallow her whole. She set her Aperol spritz down and took 2 distinct steps backward, physically distancing herself from Taylor. "Chloe, stop this!" The sharp, hysterical voice came from the sweetheart table. My mother, Diane, was out of her seat, her face flushed an ugly, mottled red. She was practically sprinting toward the DJ booth, her taupe heels catching on the hem of her dress. "Turn that off," Mom yelled, waving her hands at the AV guy. "Right now! This is a misunderstanding. Chloe, you are ruining your reception." I looked down at my mother, the woman who had spent my entire life smoothing over Taylor's sharp edges so they wouldn't cut her, leaving me to bleed instead. The nausea in my stomach vanished, replaced by a cold, settling calm. "I didn't ruin anything, Mom," I said into the mic. "I'm just sharing the wedding photos." "Scroll to the last one," I commanded. The screen flickered. The final screenshot appeared. It was the muted thread with Ben, the late-night timestamps. Taylor, May 24, 1:45. Amun: "Come on, Ben. We both know you're settling. It's fine. But we could have one fun night before you lock yourself in the suburbs forever." Ben, May 24, 6. May, Taylor: "Do not ever text me like this again. Stay away from me." The silence was dead and absolute. No one whispered, no one moved. The sheer, venomous reality of the texts, towering over the room in 10-foot letters, stripped away any plausible deniability. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't a misunderstood outfit choice. It was a calculated, pathetic attempt to destroy my life because she couldn't stand not being the center of it. Taylor dropped her cup. The plastic hit the hardwood, splashing gin and lime juice across her pristine white silk shoes. "You stole my phone," she shrieked. It was an ugly, desperate sound. The polished, magnetic facade was entirely gone. She pointed a trembling finger at me. "You went into my purse and you stole my private property. You're a psycho, Chloe. You're literally insane." She looked around the room, begging for an audience. "She's insane. Tell her. Look at her. She's obsessed with me." Nobody looked at her. The groomsmen were staring at the floor. Hannah was standing near the front, her mouth slightly open, a look of grim vindication on her face. My mother had stopped dead in her tracks halfway to the booth. She was staring up at the projection of the text messages to Ben. Her mouth opened, closed, and opened again. She looked back at Taylor, the golden child, the spirited one, the weather event. "Taylor," Mom whispered, the word carrying in the quiet room. Did you send that to Ben?" Taylor's face crumpled. "Mom, it's out of context. She's framing me." I turned the microphone off. I handed it back to the DJ, who took it as if it were radioactive. I stepped down from the riser. The heavy crepe of my dress felt lighter now. I walked across the sticky floor, directly toward the sweetheart table. The crowd parted for me like water. No one said a word. Ben was standing at our table. He hadn't moved to stop me. He hadn't shouted. He was just standing there, his suit jacket unbuttoned, his hands resting on the back of his chair. He looked at the giant screen. Then he looked at me. His jaw was tight, but his eyes were entirely soft. He didn't look embarrassed. He looked fiercely, quietly proud. I walked up to him and stopped. The adrenaline was beginning to crash, leaving behind a profound, aching exhaustion. My corset felt suffocating. My feet throbbed. "Hi," I whispered, my voice finally cracking. "Hi, Bird," he said softly. "I'm ready to go now." Ben nodded. He didn't ask questions. He didn't tell me I should stay, or that we needed to cut the cake, or that we had paid for the venue until midnight. He just reached out, took my cold, shaking hand in his warm one, and intertwined our fingers. "Okay," he said, "let's go." We turned to walk toward the exit. "Chloe, wait!" My mother intercepted us near the heavy iron doors of the warehouse. She looked entirely frantic, her carefully sprayed hair frizzing around her face. She reached out to grab my arm, but Ben smoothly stepped half a pace forward, blocking her hand without saying a word. Mom dropped her hand, looking wounded. "Chloe, please, you can't just leave. Everyone is staring. Taylor is having a panic attack in the bathroom. We need to fix this. Just come back to the table. We'll tell everyone it was a prank, a bad joke. Please, sweetheart, don't end your wedding like this." I stopped. I looked at the woman who had birthed me, raised me, and systematically taught me that my feelings were secondary to my sister's ego. "I'm not fixing anything, Mom," I said. The exhaustion made my words heavy and blunt. "I'm done fixing her messes. I'm done apologizing for her. If you want to go hold her hair while she cries about being caught, go ahead. But don't you ever ask me to shrink myself for her again." Mom stared at me, tears pooling in her eyes. "She's your sister." "And I'm your daughter," I replied. "You should have protected me." I didn't wait for a response. I pulled on Ben's hand and we pushed through the heavy iron doors. The humid June night hit us instantly. The air outside smelled of hot asphalt, city exhaust, and distant rain. It was the best thing I had ever breathed in. The muffled, chaotic noise of the reception vanished, replaced by the low hum of traffic and the hiss of a street sweeper a block away. I leaned against the brick wall of the alley, closing my eyes. I felt a tear, hot and sharp, slide down my cheek, cutting through the heavy, expensive foundation. Ben moved closer. He put his hands on my waist, pulling me gently against his chest. He smelled like cedarwood and old paper. He felt like home. "You okay?" he murmured into my hair. "I feel sick," I admitted, my voice muffled against his lapel, "and my feet are bleeding, and I think I just blew up my entire family." Ben let out a low, rough chuckle. He kissed the top of my head. "Well, they had it coming. That was the most terrifying and incredible thing I have ever seen you do." I looked up at him. "You're not mad? I ruined the reception." "Chloe," Ben said, his thumbs brushing lightly over my cheekbones, "I got to marry you today. The rest of it was just expensive noise. I don't care about the reception." He paused, looking back at the iron doors. "Though I am a little sad we didn't get to eat the cake. It cost a fortune." A short, watery laugh punched out of my chest. The knot of anxiety that had lived under my ribs for 6 months finally began to unravel. We didn't take the rented limousine. Ben ordered a rideshare from his phone. We stood on the curb, a groom in a dark suit and a bride in a heavy silk gown, waiting for a silver Honda Civic to pull up to the curb. The driver, an older man with kind eyes, took one look at us in the rearview mirror, smiled, and turned the radio down without asking. We rode back to the hotel in comfortable silence. Watching the streetlights wash over Ben's face in the back of the car, I realized that the heavy, stale air of expectation I had woken up to this morning was completely gone. An hour later, we were sitting cross-legged on the floor of our hotel room. The structured crepe silk dress was discarded, pooled in a heavy, expensive heap in the corner of the room. I had spent 10 minutes scrubbing the pins out of my hair and washing the heavy makeup down the sink. I was wearing one of Ben's oversized cotton t-shirts, the fabric incredibly soft against my skin, where the corset boning had left faint red indentations. The room smelled of grease and melted cheese. We had ordered 2 large pepperoni pizzas from a place down the street. I took a bite, the hot cheese burning the roof of my mouth slightly. It tasted infinitely better than the dry catering chicken. My phone, sitting on the nightstand across the room, had been buzzing non-stop for 45 minutes. Notifications, missed calls, voicemails from my mother, texts from aunts and cousins demanding to know what was happening. Ben noticed me looking at it. He paused, a slice of pizza halfway to his mouth. "Do you want me to turn it off?" I chewed my food, swallowed, and looked back at my husband. "No," I said, reaching for a napkin to wipe the grease from my fingers. "Let it ring. Let them talk. I don't care." And for the first time in my life, it was the absolute, unvarnished truth. I didn't care. I leaned my head against Ben's shoulder, feeling the steady, rhythmic beat of his heart. The storm was raging outside, but in here, on the floor of a quiet hotel room, it was finally peaceful. I had burned the stage down, and I had never felt more alive. Family loyalty shouldn't mean sacrificing your own peace, especially on a day meant to celebrate your future. Chloe finally stopped playing the understudy and reclaimed her narrative in the most brutal, honest way possible. Have you ever had to draw a hard line with a toxic family member? Tell us your story in the comments below. If you felt the justice in this story, make sure to hit that like button, share with a friend, and subscribe for more.